Welcome back to BTL Productions. Today we are going to continue our journey through the history of the Chevrolet Camaro. Moving on to the second generation of the Camaro, which arrived in showrooms in February of 1970 as a 70 and a half brand. This generation spanned all the way through to 1981. And if you missed the first videos in this series, I will leave a card in the top right to let you go back and check those out. GM set out to not only build the best looking Chevrolet to date, but to get back to its roots of building a true four-seater sports car for the everyday man. The look, some would say, was part Jaguar, part Ferrari, but just plain sexy. The all-new Z28 featured a big performance, 360 horsepower, 350 cubic inch LT1 V8, plus a high-performance suspension to give the car handling to match its powerful engine. With larger wheels and tires and a hood with declined striping and a rear spoiler to make this car look even sexier than the previous generation. I think they deserve that because I think they did a stellar job on this generation. Now, you could also get this car in SS 350 or 396 version. But the real story in this car was not just the powertrain, but the design and engineering that went in behind the scenes. We'll start with the exterior. Planning for this car actually started in 1967.
Stop the cap.
No, it's not cap. They actually did do a lot of planning for this car. And they wanted to build something truly unique that nobody had ever seen on the road before. 2.5 months alone were spent just on designing the concept for the exterior packaging of this car. At this point, they had answered the Mustang, although the Mustang did beat them to the punch, bringing out their pony car in 1964. But Chevrolet had yet to exceed it, and the Mustang already had a good start on them. So Chevrolet had a lot of work ahead of them. But now, GM believed it was time for Chevy to take the lead, and this was the mentality they took going into this. One of the biggest uniquenesses of the design was the lack of a rear quarter window. While this might not sound like a big deal, this hadn't been done since probably the mid-1930s Ford. It got rid of the cost of the rear windows, which then they could put into other things. But to make sure that there wasn't a huge blind spot, you had to have long doors and even a wraparound windshield. This was truly a designer's car. Generally speaking, they would look to achieve a truly masculine design, and that's exactly what they achieved. Let's look at the interior. The design studios for the interior and exterior were set up beside each other so that they could easily work together. The goal was to make the interior much more innovative than the previous one and make it very driver focused. They even isolated the gauges from the passenger and wrapped the dash right around the driver's side. This was a very unique concept for the 1970s. The end result was a large speedometer and tachometer that was surrounded in two smaller gauges, with lighting, wiper, and accessory switches surrounding them, resulting in a very exciting, sporty, and yet usable dash. As with any new car design, it can create a lot of obstacles for the engineering department and design team. But they knew that the second generation had to be done right if it was to not only compete with, but exceed the Mustang in popularity. Their ultimate goal was to make it a baby Corvette for the average customer, yet not take sales away from Corvette. One of the greatest obstacles to get everything to fit and not drag on the ground with this car, because it was significantly lower than the previous generation, which did give it an unbelievable handling experience, but a lot of engineering issues did come into play. And this created many battles from within the Chevy design team. They knew that they weren't going to do a convertible, so that did alleviate one issue, and they wouldn't have to design the body with worrying about shaking that, which you can often get with convertible cars. The next thing was to decide if they wanted to make this a fastback or a notchback. But the design teams decided that the best route to go was to design a semi-fastback, and everyone agreed. Next was to look at the noise, and they wanted to design a car that didn't have to add an absurd amount of heavy, expensive sound deadening material. They instead opted to look at the design of the body, and the engineers specifically designed the frame acoustically to avoid any unwanted sounds and vibrations. Sound barriers and extensive seam sealing around areas where noise from the engine and drivetrain may have come from were also employed. All of these challenges were the reason why this car was not ready for the summer of '69. Bryan Adams would have been very disappointed. My attempt at a joke. Anyhow, this car was released in February of 1970 instead as a 70.5 model. So when this car finally hit the streets, Car and Driver magazine said that it was, I quote, the first of a new generation of American GT cars. Something like the world has never seen in a GT car of this price before. Its shape is smoother than any Detroit effort we can think of. The new instrument panel is a brilliant layout, but it still gives the feeling of a posh tourer rather than a GT car. The driving position is extremely good, and the interior is far more spacious, particularly in the rear seat area, than you would expect from a fastback car. Car and Driver tested the 70 Z28 at 5.8 seconds in the 0 to 60 time and 4.2 seconds in the quarter mile, an incredible feat for this time period. It even had a top speed of 118 miles per hour. And Rival Magazine Road and Track went so far as to call it the best American car, and most importantly, one of the most satisfying cars for all-around use that we've ever driven. Sounds like Pontiac has achieved what they were going after. Showroom success came fast, and by April, the Camaro had zoomed past the Mustang in monthly sales. However, due to its lateness to market, it wasn't able to beat Mustang's model year sales, but still did very well. With continuous improvements along the way throughout the 1970s, the success of the Camaro continued and the popularity grew. With how much they did to the second generation of the Camaro, how could they possibly outdo this in the third generation? Or would they be able to pull this off? Stay tuned for the next video in this series to find out. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, so you will be notified when this video hits the airways. Like this video if you enjoyed the content. And as always, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate